Dr. Carol Leary, the president of Bay Path University in Longmeadow, serves as a member of the Federal Homeland Security Academic Advisory Committee. Dr. Leary came in to tell us about that key appointment and the cybersecurity and emerging technology undergraduate and master's programs Bay Path is now pioneering.
It's a group of college and university presidents, but it also includes many members of the higher education community. For example, the American Council on Education, the president of the organization that works with students traveling to America on visas to study in the United States. So it's not just college and university presidents of some of the major universities in our country, but others that have an impact on what is happening in higher education. And that organization was brought together under Jay Johnson so that we could inform, assist, represent our institutions, but more importantly, learn how we could collaborate with the government in some unique ways.
Jay Johnson was Secretary of Homeland Security under President Obama. There is a new man there now, John Kelly. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. But at this point, you've gone, as I understand it, to a couple of meetings.
Yes.
Being that this is Homeland Security, there's probably a lot you can't tell us, but give us a sense. When you, the other 7 top education leaders, get there, what are you doing? What are they looking for? If you can tell us, what are they looking for you to tell them?
Certainly, I can share what we did at our first meeting. Obviously, what they do initially is give you briefings on what is happening in Homeland Security that would affect higher education. We also discuss how our academic programs that we create, that we have in place, can affect the recruitment of our students into Homeland Security fields, cybersecurity, the FBI, the agencies that work in our government. So there is the cross-fertilization of Homeland Security with those other agencies. And more importantly, what they're doing is seeking advice on how higher education can have an influence within the communities in which we are located, the police forces, the government officials, so that we're working together whenever there are issues of cybersecurity, counterterrorism, etc.
And I don't know how many people realize it, but for several years now, Bay Path University, and it's been talked about a lot, but never could talk about it too much, has really been an academic pioneer in the area both of undergraduate and graduate programs and things like cybersecurity, terrorism, and counterterrorism. You were out, I got to say, ahead of the curve.
Well, I think we were, and I believe that's why I represent the only women's college in America at the table. We are one of the smallest because other institutions like the University of Houston, Penn State, University of Maryland, Arizona State University, University of Utah, they're at the table as well. But I believe that the emphasis that we have had in cybersecurity at the undergraduate level for the traditional students, the adult women, as well as the cybersecurity program at the master's level, attracted the attention of our government. The counterterrorism classes that we've been conducting are very unique, especially at a women's college. And that is because of a very special relationship we have with former commander of Scotland Yard, Robert Milton. He's a member of our distinguished adjunct faculty pool, and he comes to the United States, to Bay Path, twice a year, and for 1 week he travels the state. He's meeting with police forces, community college students, university students, our students, and discusses the London bombings, the Paris bombings, and how it affects criminal justice majors, legal studies majors, etc. But it's not just at Bay Path, it's statewide. And I think that also attracted the attention of our federal government.
And you folks were kind enough a few years back to send Commander Milton into us, and he did a tremendous, fascinating interview. Fascinating man, clearly a world leader in this area of cybersecurity. And one of the things he said, one of the things you've said, is that women in particular can and should and will play a vital role because of who they are in the community and in the family.
Absolutely, and you remembered very well with what Robert Milton suggested. He's a good professor then, if you remembered this, because he really believes that if we can educate more women in cyber and counterterrorism classes and the whole psychology of counterterrorism, that because of their great relational skills, their connection so deeply to family, that they may be the best source of identifying any unusual behavior in a child and be the first to see those signals, signs of perhaps being radicalized. So he really has focused many of his courses in that way.
Got to ask you a couple of questions just about dealing with Homeland Security.
Yes.
There's a great story when Business West did a story about you being invited to apply for the council, where you got an email and you said at first, "What's this?"
I did.
You were a little uncertain.
I was uncertain, and I sent it to some of my staff and said, "Is this spam?" And then when I dug a little deeper, I was really honored to have been asked. And I had my formal interview. They vetted me through all of my, my resume, my papers, and then I got a formal phone call from Jay Johnson. That impressed me most of all, that here is the Secretary of Homeland Security reaching out to invite the 8 new presidents to be part of his National Academic Advisory Council. So it was quite extraordinary.
Again, I may be getting into an area where you can't or are limited in what you can say, but when you go to these sessions, you've been to a couple, I know there's some more coming up, what sort of things do you bring in your head and sort of things you want to tell them about, here's what I think the government can do to make us safer, to help us make you safer, which I guess is what they're looking to the academics for.
They really are, and they're trying to figure out, how we ensure that the courses that we're teaching are relevant to today, that they're constantly being brought up to date. So we do talk about that. I think the role that I have played at the table is to ensure that whenever there's an issue of the hiring of future federal government employees in cybersecurity or counterterrorism, that the women that have these degrees will always be front and center. And I have a few ideas I've shared with them that I could assist them across the country, perhaps attracting more women to these fields, especially through the American Women's College Online, which is a national program. So I think that is my purpose at the table. The other, I think, absolutely significant aspect of what we're trying to do is ensure that academia, our communities, our police forces, and Homeland Security are not isolated in silos, that somehow we're working together, that the faculty who teach our courses are reaching out to the police departments, sharing the latest information, and doing the same with Homeland Security. Because there can be suspicion, right, between the academic community, the community in which you're serving, your police department, and the federal government. So how do we break those barriers down so that we're all working toward the same goal? Safety of our country, safety of our citizens, and making sure that Homeland Security is, in fact, a vital part of America.
And clearly for the individual, the student who comes out with this degree, this background, there's going to be a tremendous job market.
So many unfilled positions today in cybersecurity, and that I think the government realizes, and they are trying to find that pipeline between all of the institutions that are at the table, others that are not, to ensure that we have a very educated group of students, interns, and then employees in federal government work.
Dr. Kara Leary, president of Bay Path University, thanks so much for coming in to see us.
Jim, thank you very much for the interview.